them, they could come. They asked when they needed them. Them being on standby makes perfect logical sense. They then did what you do when someone's on standby: be quiet.
No, but did it work?
No, you stop interrupting.
You said that
stop.
They were,
and they then asked for them, and they didn't come. Period. End of conversation.
Hey guys, welcome to my brother's Ballot. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. So as we know, LA is literally on fire right now, and I was watching NewsNight with Abby Phillips, and they were discussing it, and of course, you know, the panel went crazy, so let's get into it.
Yeah. The real question is the National Guard's presence there become the lightning rod that has given the protests more juice, more to react to?
And I think that is the question, Ben, for the Trump administration.
Yeah.
That they clearly want to make this a moment where they talk about the enforcement of immigration laws. But is that more important than simply turning the dial down of intensity on the streets and getting these people off the streets?
I think they understand that people's lives are at risk. I think they understand how quickly things can get out of control. I think they saw what you mentioned earlier, and that was that LA clearly didn't have a plan the first several days. And having a family that's in law enforcement, a dad that has been a police officer in Memphis, Tennessee, when things get bad, they can go really bad really quickly. You see this happen when there's flashpoints. And the idea that we are going to now decide or argue or debate over who are good law enforcement and who are the ones that are antagonizing when clearly they're.
I think that is exactly what should be happening. I think I've said this in my videos to you guys quite a bit of time. And essentially, that is, we have to stop viewing police officers as something we love or hate. There's such danger in that. Police officers, which, don't get me wrong, there are definitely a lot of things that I would love to change about the police. There are a lot of things that just in its inception, I feel that should change. But they are a necessary function in our country. And so when someone loves the police, oh, I support the blue, I back the blue, you tend to allow people that have so much power to do things that they should not be able to do. And on the flip side of it, when you hate the police, you tend to criticize them at every turn when that's not helpful either.
They're all trying to work together is total insanity when there's people that clearly want law and order. If I have a business in LA tonight, I want as many law enforcement as I can have there, regardless who they are. And by the way, this isn't unprecedented. I go back to the riots that happened in the 90s in LA. Everyone's acting like what Trump's doing tonight is like unprecedented. No, it's not.
It actually is unprecedented. If I'm not mistaken, I think LBJ was the last president that sent the National Guard in without asking the governor, or at least being in communication with the governor. And that's what Trump did. The last time that happened, that was with LBJ. And that was, he actually sent the National Guard in to protect the protesters and a lot of the children that were integrating into school, a lot of the Black children that were integrating into the school. So it actually does lack precedence. This is the second time that this has happened. Again, the first time to protect people from racism, and this time to punish protesters.
It's not. The Marines were called in by George Bush 41.
Almost the entire city of LA was on fire at that point.
But again, my question is, when you've seen it happen before, why wouldn't you make sure it never happens again?
Here's a key difference. In 92, when the National Guard came and assisted with the LA riots, it was at the request of the governor. So that's the main difference between then and now, is that the governor and local officials have not asked.
Here's what I would say. We have seen people make huge mistakes in moments for political reasons. I'll give you a great example of that.
And what is Trump doing? Is he not doing this for political reasons? Again, he pardoned over 1,500 January 6ers. Do you really care that he cares about civil unrest? I think it just depends on what the people that are doing the civil unrest look like.
Well, that is Katrina. I was at the White House the night that hit on August the 29th, and there was politics involved. You had a mayor that said, we don't need any help. And you had George Bush 43 who's begging to declare emergency, could send the National Guard. And they begged them not to put them in a death trap in the Superdome. My point is this. When you have people that only care about politics, and let's be clear, Gavin Newsom is obviously trying to have a moment here.
Well, Donald
where
Trump
he
is
can
always
say,
trying to have a moment.
But
That's
Donald Trump's not
exactly
running
why-
for re-election.
That's exactly
Gavin
what he
Newsom's
might
trying
be,
to
but
become
people
president.
had the threat of
No, he's not.
arresting-
He's already said he's not. and
Whatever.
he got
That's
trolled.
besides
All right,
the point.
let me-
That's besides the
let me
point. The
look.
point
Please,
is,
Mandela,
Donald
hold on.
Trump
Go
has
ahead.
already threatened to arrest Gavin Newsom. This is only a political moment. Why we can always go back to January 6th and ask why weren't the National Guard called in then when police officers were being attacked?
I can tell you why. Hold on. I can tell you why. Go back to Nancy Pelosi's own
No,
words.
no,
The
no,
president
no. The president,
offered-
the president had an opportunity.
Because I think
No.
That is not, well, he's telling a half truth. So he did offer the National Guard, but Nancy Pelosi declined it, but she declined it prior to the protest. And she also said, can we have them on standby? And when she actually did need them, he did not allow the National Guard to come, essentially.
No.
I think you're
The
an honest
president
man.
had an
Hold on.
opportunity.
I want to go on first. True or
No.
false? Did they say to Nancy Pelosi that if you want to go ahead and bring in the National Guard and others, we will more than happy do that? And Nancy Pelosi was the one that said no.
The president
True or
fanned the
false?
flames in
True or
every
false?
January 6th?
Yes. Beforehand, they said we will give you the resources before January 6th, and she said no.
Every
So there's
every
another
single
example.
Hold on,
single
hold on.
single-
Hang
no,
on,
single
hang on,
fan
hang
of
on,
flames
hang
Guys,
on.
fanned
everybody
by the
just one
president.
second.
First
Let me just get everybody one
But
at a time.
am I right?
I want John to just answer that
The
quick
chief of the
question.
Capitol Police went to the architect of the Capitol and the sergeant at arms from both houses. The chief of the Capitol Police does not know who they went to, but let's assume they went to their political
Pelosi said
leadership
this.
and
That's what she said.
and that they said they didn't want the National Guard brought in. They wanted them on standby. The day of the riot, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are on the phone saying, "Can we get the National?"
Do you see how that's completely two different statements? She did not want them to come. That is what the young man on the left is saying. And obviously what I just said and what the man on the right is saying is that she did not want them to come preemptively, but she wanted them on standby. Those are two very different statements. One is the truth and one is a half truth.
National Guard.
So
But that
let me
is-
use
that
that
is-
logic.
All right, no.
Hold
on, Ben.
My point is this.
Ben and Mandela, just give me 1 second, okay? So you got the answer to your question. They requested the National Guard on January 6th when the riot was occurring.
Too
Christine.
late. So we
They
do
were-
it early.
Hang on.
Ben, just give me a second,
They were
Christine.
asked if they were put on standby, so when they needed them, they could come. They asked when they needed them. Them being on standby makes perfect logical sense. They then did what you do when
So
someone's
it
on
worked?
standby, be quiet.
No, but did it work?
No, you stop interrupting.
You said that
Stop.
they were.
Ben,
They
Ben, just
then
let her finish her
asked
thought, please.
For them, and they didn't come.
And again, I think I've said this to you guys before. The reason that people like Ben and Scott Jennings love to interrupt you and try to throw you off of your point is because they know that what you're about to say is the truth, and it completely ruins their point of view. It completely devalues what they're saying because they are at best telling half truths.
Period. End of conversation. They asked in the thick of the moment. They didn't get them. The difference here in California is the governor has not asked. That's the difference between 1992. If you want to talk about who's engaged in a political stunt, and I've criticized Gavin Newsom for being too political many times, but this political stunt is on the president, Donald Trump. Bringing in these
Restoring law and
National
order
Guard
is-
has escalated the problem, A. B, they are not really
A lot of the protests that I've seen just throughout the 35 years I've been on this planet, a lot of them always start off very peaceful. At the moment that the National Guard or the police arrive with their riot gear, the police are already omnipresent. And so when they show up in gear, riot gear that is heavily militarized, it does ratchet up and elevate the tension in the air. The last thing police presence in riot gear does is de-escalate.
doing anything, just escalating and adding tensions. And beyond that, it's a violation of the 10th Amendment.
But Article
This-
4, excuse
Thank
me,
you.
Article
Go-
4,
thank you.
Section 4 doesn't require the governor Trump can send the National
And
Guard
that
in
is
without the governor. So
unprecedented.
it doesn't matter. He can do it.
He can do it.
He can do it.
That's why they
Under
haven't stopped
invasion
it.
or under violence.
The president has
He
picked
can
and
do it.
choose which
There's
law and
no
order he wants to enforce.
Well,
If
there's
it's to his
violence going
benefit,
on.
then there is law and order is not enforced.
Look, I do think that this
Give
is
me
an
an example of
important.
that.
Hold on, Ben.
January 6th.
Hold on a sec, Ben. It's an important question. Invasion or a rebellion. Neither of those things are happening
Violence,
right now.
violence,
Yeah, but
violence against citizens.
that's not what the statute says.
That's
An
not a
invasion
category.
or rebellion. That's not what the statute says. So this is going to be tested. That's why California's suing, because they are saying that there's no basis for the president to do this just because he doesn't.
They're suing under a process. They're suing a process.
Right now.
Exactly. They're literally picking and choosing when to sic the National Guard on different types of protest. That's literally what's happening here.
It's a law
They're saying
enforcement
the process didn't go the right ways to request from the governor to do it prior to doing it. It's a process. It's a process argument.
I think that the
more than a
bigger.
It's not about the process. It's listen, I am no fan of Governor Newsom whatsoever. But I would venture to think that he knows his state much better than Donald Trump does. And for Donald Trump to circumvent the governor of California and bring in the National Guard, it is only to have the said photos that we see here, the said videos that we see here, to show, see, these liberal places that are run by these liberals, the place is on fire. Meanwhile, we all know California being the largest state in the country, LA being a massive city, this protest started off within just 4 blocks. It wasn't like the Rodney King riots in the 90s. This protest was within 4 blocks. And once the National Guard came in, it exacerbated it.
I think the bigger issue.
The argument's a process in the court. They will lose. They will
but
lose.
it's not a process argument.
California will lose.
There's a reason why people get very concerned when you're talking about deploying military assets domestically, John. This happens, right? It has happened in the past.
It happened,
but
it has happened many times.
It has happened many times that using the
but
Insurrection
it does not
Act.
often happen without the request of local authorities.
Exactly. But I mean, what is from a law enforcement perspective, right? They are already dealing with a very tense situation. You bring the military into it when you have these crowds who have political grievances. They believe that this president is behaving in a way that.
And let's be very clear. Places like New York City and Los Angeles, for a lot of people on the right to think that those are such huge liberal bastions, they are also 2 of the places that have the most bloated police budgets. They are also the places that literally the police have tanks and gear that should not be used on everyday citizens. At the end of the day, I think we have to realize that this is actually nothing but a political ploy that will get people hurt. This is knocking on the door to fascism at the end of the day. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick little video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Peace.